the Metro Council Executive Committee meeting. It is Monday, November 25th, and I do detect a quorum. So this committee, just for the public, is comprised of all the chairs of our standing committees, along with our President Pro Tem. So I'll just get started briefly off the top with a few updates. As you all know, we've been working, or staff rather has, on some legislative primers that are in our office, and they are there for your reference about various policies that you probably get a lot of questions about, and or that we've been kind of working on in the code a lot, like a lot of updates. So those include the noise ordinance, pets and animals, short-term rentals, tree policy, sidewalk vending, and new, since we last met, parking policy and traffic calming policies. Coming soon, in progress. Mr. Wilson just gave me a sidewalks primer. So those are kind of in the legislative division over there by Margaret, Hannah, and Brian's office, and can be checked out in office. So unlike our resource library that everybody's welcome to check out and take home, those need to kind of remain in the office, but we really appreciate staff's work on those. So those are like detailed legislative histories, and then kind of an executive summary off the top with some of the kind of key points. So just wanted to share that with you, that parking and traffic calming are new and sidewalks are on the way. Okay, so I think we had 15, Ms. Hayes, members attending the National League of Cities. Is that right?
Sure.
Okay, and so thank you to everybody who made the effort to attend. Several among you here, Chair Gamble was there, Chair Hill, and Chair Evans. And so I want to thank again staff and Rosie in particular, who joined us, helping us get all kind of coordinated. That is a big undertaking. I wanted to mention that Chair Porterfield created in Council Connect a discussion topic there related to National League of Cities. I think kind of hoping that that would be somewhat of a repository for any information or resources that you found interesting. And so I did just want to encourage chairs, if there's anything that you kind of garnered at National League of Cities, whether on, you know, the resources that they compiled. There were quite a few sessions about AI in cities, which I thought was very timely. And so like printed resources like that, if I could, I got them, and those will be in your in the physical resource library, right, that you can check out. But I'm also going to go into Council Connect and print, or rather link in the digital version of that. So if there's anything, Ms. Evans, in the public health space, or Ms. Hill, that you want to put into Council Connect, you know, there are some vendors there, and yes, that is somewhat promotional on their part, but we do have things like, you know, GIS and Esri, and that really has a pretty tight nexus with the policy we do. I often say I don't know how we did land use policy before GIS mapping, and so I've really found these to be, you know, this is not like a sales pitch. It really is how a lot of cities have used GIS in concert with their policy. So that's going to be in the resource library now, along with a whole host of other things. So be on the lookout for that. And if you are so inclined to get into Council Connect and post a few things in there, I would be grateful. And if you do have a previous post, remember that you can kind of comment that and kind of activate it a little bit. But I do think engagement is up on that platform. And sometimes, you know, things are just in there. It's one time. It doesn't really require discussion, but I just wanted to elevate that again. As well, I wanted to share that I have requested from staff kind of an informal report or list of all the, it's a report of the reports, basically all the reports to council. Okay, so I know we all often get whether from Ms. Calder, because it came from the health department, to myself and the council, from you know, the hospital authority board, or the water department sends out something, or we get the annual, the annual use of postage and paper update, right? Like, so these things kind of get dropped in over time and sent out over our service by a wide variety of folks. So we're wanting just to kind of aggregate them so that we understand, and so I appreciate that, and those are in progress. Do you have?
Yeah, I was just going to give you a little more detailed update. The list is in progress. We actually have compiled the list, but it has a lot of information in there that kind of begs additional questions that I'm attempting to get answered. So, some of the reports we can find them easily on Nashville.gov, others we can't, so we're trying to, compile where we can find all the reports. Are we getting the reports that we're supposed to be getting? If not, why not? So we're just trying to get some more information before sharing that information so that all the questions that I suspect people will have once getting the list are already answered.
The report of the report and the list of all the list, but in your capacity as chairs, if the departments that are kind of under your umbrella have standard reporting, just want you to be aware of that, that is in progress, and then also kind of just who, what, when, quarterly, annual, by code. Do we still need it to be happening? Go ahead, Chair Parker. Yeah.
Yes. So the compilation of this list, is that going to be just like a resource where we can see a list of reports that exist, or would this be like a public-facing web page with all of these, or like a SharePoint or something? Like what's the?
I think it kind of remains to be seen,
okay,
because they live in so many different places, and I think that was kind of my confusion over my service. Like, I would be like, oh, well, why am I getting this, or what's that for? And sometimes they live on a department's website. Sometimes, they were basically just living in our inboxes, and so to kind of recall, like, oh, did J.O.N. Cooper send that, or did Jameson send that? Did Starby send it? Who sent it? And like to ferret it out was a little difficult. So I think it remains to be determined, but I think we can bring it back to this committee and say, okay, here's the landscape, here's all the stuff that we have, and what would be. But I would invite you all to continue to kind of keep looking into that Metro Council resources page, because we continue to kind of put things in there, reorganize that, whether under the topic of your committee or just things that, just to kind of float in our inbox, but like we know people want to reference, so it's all kind of aggregating there somewhat. So it could be like that or there, kind of to be determined.
Okay.
But yeah, good question for sure. In a similar vein, and I'm grateful for staff and Danielle, in my capacity, or whether through the mayor's office, there are a wide variety of committees, task force, commissions, the board and commission work that Ms. Sepulveda is representing us on. But staff pulled together a spreadsheet for me of every person who serves on every committee, that whether I've appointed or the mayor's appointed, or the working groups, just to kind of keep up with all that stuff, which I think is hopefully kind of a process or something that can live beyond me, but I think that's just helpful to get all these things kind of organized in that regard. So I appreciate Danielle and staff for working on all those things. Do just remember that Danielle, as chairs, is your primary point of contact for kind of logistical and scheduling matters related to your committee, special meetings, getting something into your committee SharePoint, and so forth. So that's a little inside the office stuff. And then I guess then as it relates to social media, and I guess maybe that graphic is visible to everybody, but we launched these accounts kind of in late October, publicly in November. So a special thank you again to our staff, which I mentioned at last meeting, for getting that going. A lot of stuff back of house happening on that. But in your leadership capacities, please do follow and share. If you look at the account today, Melanie Cruz did a great job creating kind of a talk-through video of how to use Legistar. And so stuff that is very kind of nerdy and council specific is in there. And I think probably the most fun thing that we're posting right now is our Paws Across Metro partnership. And we're talking to libraries as well, maybe to do something similar with them, some library features. But I think that's a place where we might get a little more dynamic. You know, we might actually like post those into stories and save it as a highlight maybe or something. You know, be really crazy. Margaret's looking.
Look at the time.
So, yeah, so a special thank you to staff for doing all that. You know, we've got kind of a posting schedule right now, and we're getting on a cadence of them kind of sharing that. So you've started to see sort of the standard posts, the meeting announcements, the office closures, and then you'll start to see more like the Legistar post that you see today that's just a little more dynamic, a little more informational. And I guess I just thought at this time, does anybody have any kind of feedback or questions or anything about the social media accounts in particular at this time?
I guess I have one question.
Yeah, sure.
What if you get anything negative or anything that's, I mean, what do you do with that? Do you just go?
All of our accounts are closed to comments.
Got it. Okay.
So we have the comment feature turned off, so there are no comments coming in from the public or otherwise.
Okay. And then like shares.
It is
same thing.
outward going, informational.
Yeah, if you, however, were to share a post and on your own platform, you know, your choice. Personally, all my comments are open, so
Yeah.
and I think that's true for most members. But I think we now know that there is a court ruling that says maybe if you share it, then that post kind of becomes yours. So from a comments perspective, that would be on your own personal post. So.
Stay away from mine.
Yeah.
Can I just comment real quick?
Yeah, of course, Ms. Darby. Yeah, go ahead.
That litigation, back in July, I sent an email out to everyone, and at the very end of it, there was a paragraph about the social media litigation decision that had just come down from the Supreme Court. If you have a personal account and you have not been authorized to speak, expressly authorized to speak on behalf of the governmental entity, then you can, block people, do whatever you want with your comments. So, and I will be sending an updated version of that probably tonight with some changes to that same memo.
Okay. Okay, all right. All right, that covers social media.
Question, please, Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Campbell. Go ahead, Chair.
Just a question about the post itself. When we're tagging, I guess is what it is,
Yeah.
we're tagging these metro sites. Are they automatically uploaded? Is someone from the council staff reviewing and accepting post? How does that work?
So you can continue to use the hashtag Metro Council Nash, and our account does that as well. I can't speak to if you tag at Nashville MCO, but Ms. Cruz, do you want to respond to that?
So as of right now, we're not allowing anyone to post anything directly onto our page. So even if you do tag us, the tag will still show up on your page. It just won't show up on ours.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the only thing where I'm like, you can still feel free to tag us, because anytime that you do, a constituent or anyone that's following you can go directly to our page. However, your post won't appear on our page.
Okay, so how do we have it where it appears? There's no way to appear, so it's just simply tagging and they can go to the metro site. Gotcha. Okay.
And if you repost any of our
Yeah,
posts.
you can
they'll
repost or share any post and add whatever you want to that within reason, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're all set on social media? Okay. So we're going to try one more time an ITS open house in advance of our December 3rd council meeting. And so folks from ITS will be here in kind of the training open area at your disposal. So if you want to learn to optimize your inbox and set up more inbox rules, or you have this perennial problem, or you've got 3 different email signatures on 3 different things and it's confusing, like any of that stuff, please do remember though, 24/7, almost 365, ITS is kindly at your disposal. But I do know sometimes those things that are a little, you just want to like sit down with another person and say, how do I do this?
And when was the date and time of this?
This is December 3rd, in advance of and across committees. I believe, are we at 3 o'clock start, Ms. Darby?
I don't know, I can't remember.
Okay, well, I will get that out to you very shortly, but roughly.
I just bought a MacBook, and so I just switched everything over from PC to Apple, and so I need a little help.
Okay, you are welcome to do that during.
I need a lot of help.
An open Councilmember, if I could interject
Yes,
real
of
quick.
course.
At any time, if you want to schedule an appointment with ITS, they can help you with that sort of thing. You just need to call the help desk and get something scheduled.
Okay.
Or we can help you get that scheduled.
Right. Like
You don't need to just
if
go
that's not
on
an
this one.
optimal time for you, you can set up that appointment and they can meet you at the office. So that is available to members all the time. Yep, so, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, you might want to snooze.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm getting,
Just wing it at first.
actually,
That'd be helpful.
You can use your, can't use the trackpad to do it on the.
It's 2 different
Oh,
devices.
it's two
God.
different
Well, it's
things.
saying it's
Never
going to
mind.
update in 3 minutes and
Uh-oh.
turn off, so I don't know if that's going to cut a meeting off.
It may be 3 hours, though,
Oh, well,
Chair.
that would be enough time,
Typically
probably.
3 hours.
I think it's 3 hours, 58.
Let me ask some questions.
It's not letting me.
Here, just continue, I'll have
Okay.
ITS.
Thank you much, but thank you. Yeah, if it were 3 minutes, that would have been a little more pressing.
That's what I saw. If it's 3 hours, I think we're good.
Right. Cram all this in real fast. That same evening or afternoon, Sister Cities will be with us to schedule or record holiday greetings. So I believe Sarah Lingo, Ms. Hayes, I think we've asked her to reach out to council directly to get those scheduled. So you should be receiving something from her. That'll be happening kind of concurrently with the open house. And then as well, that evening will be our public hearing night dinner. And since we're on the backside of Thanksgiving and kind of going into the holidays, nothing fancy, but just maybe a little bit different, a little more interesting. We're gonna, look for those 3 things on the evening of our next meeting. Okay, so at this juncture, that's it for my updates. And then we're going to move into council office staff updates. And first among those is the follow-up, and you've got the draft kind of policy here regarding proclamations and presentations. So we had begun a discussion at last executive committee meeting about kind of moving towards 5 proclamations and asking folks to kind of be thinking about things that way as they kind of transition to working with members of the community as far as like what the commitments there are that they're making, right? So to kind of level set on the expectations when you are providing those. Hello, Mr. Morrison, come on in and sit on down. We're not quite to your section of the agenda, but we're moving right along. And so this is just a draft policy at this juncture for your feedback. And I guess kind of key things to share, I think what I understood from members and was hearing is that if we're looking to kind of balance out resolutions and proclamations, right? As resolutions are often things that, you want to be on the historical record, forever and ever. And sometimes that's, a little bit, it's a different line for different members of what's a proclamation, what's a resolution. Obviously, a proclamation's a little bit more nimble, right? A slightly tighter turnaround on that. But to kind of honor wanting to kind of have these live somewhere, staff has kindly worked to create an archive of proclamations that can now be found online. And so that's what's presented here. Well, let's see. I changed the slide here, but it is not changing there.
I think it takes a smidge of time.
A few seconds.
These slides haven't shown up on the feed yet.
Yeah, I changed it maybe 2 minutes ago, and then I went back and, sorry. That's okay.
Madam Vice Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
While you're
Yeah,
looking at
please,
that,
yeah.
can I make a
Yes.
question?
Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Yikes, okay.
It's okay, it looks like the elevator did for like a year.
Oh, yeah. This looks really great. It's very substantive. It looks like it captures all the things that you've been talking through. One thing I have a question on the digital copies. So if we do want, for the digital copies, or the digital copy of it, if we wanted to request staff print a certain amount, so if we wanted, because we want to hand those particular ones out to students, so if we have 30 students, we can have those printed out. Like there's not a capture in here for that. So is that would be okay, right? Or is it just,
Well,
you're trying to get away from printing anything other than just the one, and I can go print this myself?
I may, but you can't see it. We've got,
I can't be the only one that has a lot of students that have Girl Scouts, graduation.
so the digital version of the proclamation, and I appreciate, hello, Mr. Reptine. Got an agenda, and we're talking about draft kind of proclamation policy. The digital version is intended primarily for use on social media, right? If you would want to share. So depending on the age of your kind of partner guests, right, you'll get one, as proposed, one ceremonial copy, which is the one with 2 seals.
Yeah, no, I get that, and then the copies without the presentation.
Right.
So if we wanted to, we'll need to personally print those if we wanted to hand out those copies to
Correct. So
students.
basically, the ones that are on special paper with ribbon and seals and all that, that's up to 5.
Yeah, no, I got that, but if we want to take the digital
The
copy,
digital version is printable.
we will need to print those on our own. Is that correct?
Correct, as proposed, right.
So can we make an amendment to that if we wanted to have just plain white paper? If not, then it would be on special fancy paper. If not, we can handle it ourselves anyway.
Yeah, so
Do
just
like a school
basically printing the digital version onto plain white paper for
If that's the best we
purposes
can
of
do for our
handing.
students, I think that's fine.
handing that out.
I think
Okay.
the idea also behind the digital version was that you could email it to your troop leader or your teacher or whomever the main contact is, that they could then disperse it to the individual, the other individuals or the.
I get it. I just want to make it a special thing for them, so handing them something other than email is wonderful. But I think Speaker Pro Tem Sepulveda has it.
Yeah, Ms. Sepulveda, go ahead.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I think it's important to note that at the end of Rules Committee, we had a brief discussion about changing the way we do honorary resolutions and proclamations, and there might be the possibility of a council member bringing forward legislation that would change this procedure. So if that happens and the body does vote to approve that, I think limiting us to 5 of these would not work. And I'm not saying I necessarily agree with that. But this discussion started with Councilmember Coupin's proposed rule change, and that was deferred, if I remember. Withdrawn to have a special called meeting that Chair Prepti is going to host. I don't know if you want to speak more to that, but.
Yeah, so with regard to the specially called meeting, we're looking at dates in January, but specifically with the rule changing procedure that Councilmember Coupin is proposing. And allow me to pause and say my apologies for my tardiness. But with regard to that proposed rule change, I agree with Madam Pro Tem that this would interfere significantly with the procedures that we have in place currently. Those ideas need to be a little more fleshed out as to whether or not the proposed rule changes are something that the committee and ultimately the body would want to support, but those are ongoing conversations at this point.
Okay, so his proposed rule change was to allow late filing honorary resolutions?
Correct.
Okay. And Ms. Darby, do you seek to be recognized? Go ahead. Yeah.
I just, currently, this policy is only about proclamations, not
Yeah.
resolutions. So
Yes.
if the rule that was proposed at the end of the meeting were to be filed and approved, and then, it takes 30 days before it becomes effective, it would give us time to modify this policy or create another policy that would be specific to, or to modify this policy if everything was gonna be a proclamation, that maybe some of the concerns would be addressed.
Yeah, it would be any honorary, there would be no honorary resolutions. Basically was what was discussed at the end of Rules Committee.
Okay. No honorary resolutions at all?
Yes.
I don't know if I think that's appropriate, but okay, we can have that conversation.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I just wonder how do you determine? I mean, anything that says honor,
I did not.
okay.
Yeah, I think we've often talked about how, again, there's a little bit of a continuum, right? And what I often say to members is think about do you want this to be on the permanent historical record? And so, what I sensed from members is kind of in that in-between space of is this 50th anniversary for this lovely couple, does that need to be on the historical record in Metro, or is it more about taking them a real genuine kind gesture, for that special event, and you want to be present and kind of do right by that, and having these proclamations sort of live for the term. They will be put up once a month so that they live there in digital form and linked out, so that as far as kind of the record, they do live a place other than the thing that you handed to somebody. But I do think there are certainly things, 100th anniversary, sesquicentennial, somebody 50, there are things that need to be on the historical record that are not specifically, your standard legislation, so.
Well, I'm not sure they will file it at the end of the day, but it was, I think it's going to be discussed at the special call meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, alrighty, well, we can continue to have this conversation, but at present, this is a draft, I think, that is responsive to just a host of kind of expressed concerns and challenges, both from staff and members, and so I do recognize that it's hard to kind of, strike that balance somewhat, but I do, when we kind of print out, 5 copies with ribbons and folders, that's $30. 10 copies with the gold embossed folder, that's $55. So far this term, we've had roughly 120 proclamations, so it's, there's a cost there. Go ahead, Chair Parker, you're recognized.
Not directly related to this conversation, but there are printers in the office that we can go in and use. You can like email
That's
stuff
right.
to it, or you can like put it on a USB drive and just.
It's really all it's needed, well, the digital copies.
We're not supposed to be using those printers.
Okay.
Say that, Reggie.
I'm pretty sure about the cost if we start doing a bunch of color copies, because that's what this ultimately is. There's a digital seal at the bottom of the document and the little digital ribbon at the bottom of the document.
It's less expensive than doing the.
It is, it depends
Yeah.
on how many copies you have.
Well, and that's the only thing, I'm able to personally do this, I mean,
Right.
as a personal expense to myself, that's not really a big deal, it's something I can absorb. But my only thing has been, what are the things we actually give and leave to constituents? So that's been my one thing, and, so, I think we have adequately, done away with giving out 30 proclamations with this draft, so thank you. But, but anyways, that is the thing that I'm just trying to get to, is like things that we can, like the Girl Scouts we had, that you gave them a business card and they flipped out. Every family member that
Very excited.
received an actual physical proclamation, their parents and their students at West End Middle have continued to reach out and talk about how powerful that is, which are things that I know that the state legislature, folks here, like that's something that we give. So yes, we would have to budget. If we don't want to even spend resources on printed out paper copies from a digital, I can live with that because I can personally have those spent. But for other members that have that interest, it would be something that we should cost or perhaps, extend as you're supporting council member staff, to council members to do that work.
And I think that's, a fair effort to kind of achieve a middle path. I think, what we had been seeing is, 30 copies requested for, the football team that's coming to the special thing, and then, 5 or 6 folks show up, and then, staff had spent a lot of time putting that together. We can pull those apart. We still use the folders. We didn't go necessarily to waste, but sort of looking at kind of what's requested and what's needed, it seemed that was going to accommodate most members. But I do appreciate, and I know we've tried to kind of assess individual costs, so, maybe there is a kind of pathway there.
If we can I think maybe revisit the subject of getting something to hand out to constituents or to people that are present.
Well,
But I know with stickers at one point, I haven't heard back if we've actually gotten something like that, if it was.
Ms. Hayes is going to report on that shortly, as far as kind of tokens of sort for our younger guests and things like that. So that is in progress. So we'll report on that. But I appreciate the feedback. So what I'm hearing from you is you would like to have the ability, whether with your own paper or otherwise, basically to just be able to print them out, but not use the extra folders and just onto paper.
At this point, I think we're down to the digital copies. So these are just print out, and I've had that done. I think there were 6 copies or something. It's easy, but we can also, maybe if no other council member uses this as a service to consider, like, I think you just, bag it, but. This is, like I said, this is just fine. I don't have any issue with this. I just was curious if anything we can do, we can address it later in the agenda to give to constituents. And if I'm the only one seeking constituent
You're not.
tokens,
We're going to bring
then
it up a little bit later.
We can move on.
Ms. Gamble, go ahead. You're recognized.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. My question relates to the timeline. It says that requests should be emailed at least 5 business days prior, which in most cases is fine unless you're doing a proclamation for someone who has passed and you don't find out until 2-3 days before when the funeral is. So are there any exceptions for
Somebody being
funerals or
deceased or something like that.
And also as it relates to the not adding co-sponsorships after the, is that after one copy is printed? Because we have had situations where we may get a email on a Friday about let us know if you want to sign on by end of day. And I don't even see it until the next day. And we've had it printed without people on it and had to bring it back and add people on it. Normally, it's only one copy that's been printed, so if there's any exceptions or leeway with that as well.
Okay. Making a note. Okay, it looks like we have our screen back, and so here is the proclamation archive. Again, thank you to Ms. Cruz. She has gone back and created a digital version of every single proclamation that we as members have done since the start of this term. And it will be updated at the end of every month. So when you receive your requested proclamation, the digital version of that will be emailed to you kind of simultaneously at that time, right? So you have your kind of print ceremonial resource, your ceremonial copy, the other copies you would like, and the digital version. And then at the end of every month, those will go up into the archive. And the archive will include also the digital version and the printable version as well. Ms. Cruz, go ahead.
So the proclamations are going to be categorized by whatever date they're signed on. So if your date is signed on December 2nd, it won't be uploaded until January 1st, just because that's what we're going with, to make sure we don't upload a proclamation before you've had the chance to present it.
Right, right. And depending if we have an issue relative to signatures or otherwise, like that just affords a little window of time. Yeah. Let's see. So here, the proclamation archive, you can see where that is located under the meeting center. Is that on our resources page?
It's on the legislative information.
Information
Okay.
Center in the navigation pane, and then if you just scroll down to the bottom of that page, the
Okay.
list and our
Got it. There it is, going back to the start of October, so we can see all of those. Here is a digital version with the embossed Metro seal and the ribbon, and what that will kind of look like. Of course, it looks different depending on, is it legal? Is it standard letter size? Did it just have one signature? Did it have multiple signatures on it? But with the thought that, you know, you're intending to use it primarily for social media purposes. So, okay. I will just leave that up for now because there are going to be some other, is there any other input at this time? Of course, kind of consider this basically open. This has been presented to you. We don't expect that you'll just absorb this all right now. But Ms. Darby, do we want to set kind of a feedback threshold timeline as far as executive committee feedback on this?
There's a holiday this week, so maybe mid-December,
Okay.
December 15-ish.
Okay.
Is that
All right, so if you have feedback, thoughts, changes for this.
December 16th.
December 16th?
Yeah.
Okay, if you could get those to Ms. Darby and I by December 16th, okay? Alrighty, so that's the proclamation project. Thanks to everybody who's been working on that. And then next, Ms. Darby, I'm gonna recognize you regarding public comment rules change implementation.
Y'all all should have received an email from me and with your directions on how to get the Tennessee residency requirement met during your committee meetings. You'll recall we changed the rule a couple of months ago to require a person speaking at public comment to be a Tennessee resident. There is a list. You can find this list on our website under council notes, under public comment, on that little navigation bar that you pull down. That will show you the list of documents that are kind of pre-approved, acceptable documents. It's pretty broad and accepting of pretty much anybody who can prove that they live in the state of Tennessee. If you live in the state of Tennessee, you are welcome to come speak at our public comment period for 2 minutes. You have to sign up in advance. Sign-up's 5 to 6, and the sign-up table is out on the mezzanine in front of the doors to the clerk's office. We have staff out there staffing the table from 5 to 6 to check the IDs for the main council meeting. For your committee meetings, you also have to get the proof of residency determined before the person can speak. I know that we don't get a lot of public comment during committee meetings, but sometimes we do. So you'll need to, I think when we're in committee rooms, it's a little bit easier for you to be sitting at the table to check the, whether it's a photo ID or some other form of proof. But when we're in the chamber having meetings, you might want to, and I would recommend that you get your vice chair to check the IDs. Occasionally, you're gonna know that somebody is a Tennessee resident because the person speaking is a known Metro employee. In that case, I think it's helpful to say to the public, if you're not actually checking their ID, that I know that you're a Tennessee resident because in order to be employed by Metropolitan government, you must be a Tennessee resident. So it's pretty clear in that regard. But otherwise, you would need to check IDs before people. I keep saying IDs, but check for proof of Tennessee residency prior to the meeting starting. When we are in the council chamber, I'm usually sitting right next to you, so if you have any questions about it, I'm there to answer. And then when we are in committee rooms, I usually attend 2 of the committees, and Hannah Zeitlin attends the other 2, so you can always ask either one of us if you have any questions about somebody's proof of residency.
Ms. Darby, there's now like a laminated info sheet?
Yes, that you need to leave in the room. It's for each committee room.
Don't take it with you.
It says, I think in red at the bottom, for committee room 2 or 1 or 4, and that should be placed in there before each committee meeting, so you have that in front of you to kind of have the instructions about how to check.
Okay. Chair Parker, did you have a question?
I had a question about the sign-up process. So, I mean, if we're verifying residency, I mean, folks would need to use their actual names for signing up on the sheet. Or, I mean, like if somebody's gotten married and they haven't changed that in their ID yet, within reason, we would expect that a person's actual name would be what they sign up with.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, heretofore, we referred to the clerk's counter, and there was a clipboard there. Staff is now out in the mezzanine area with the table out there, since the checking of IDs or documentation takes a little bit more.
It requires somebody to
Right.
actually
Right.
confirm and check the proof of residency.
Right.
Prior to the rule change, you just came and signed up, and we did not have to have, council staff attend the sign-in period.
Yeah, so staff has a table that they just sort of roll out, and then they roll all the way back over to the office. Staff as well can kind of help and remind, and I do just want to elevate because I got several questions. If somebody is signing up for public comment about a matter that otherwise has a public hearing, they will be told, by the way, this also has a public hearing. You all may have heard me offer to members in the gallery but the interpretation as of right now is that I can invite that basically in a space of, manners and discretion, would the person be willing to wait for the public hearing for this matter? But as presently interpreted, I cannot say to them that they can't speak at that time. I have asked Ms. Darby to look at that again and double check that, because I do feel like effectively it's line jumping right? Because if people have come there for purposes of the public hearing, and then people fill up every public comment slot to speak on something that otherwise has a public hearing, I just think sort of procedurally and fairness-wise, that's not great. But we do need to be kind of in line with state law, and state law does say as well, we have to give precedent to matters that are on the agenda. So if somebody wants to speak on an item of general concern, then what happens if somebody takes up a slot that is on the agenda, if somebody in just good faith has shown up here because they want to talk about street safety or elevate an issue to us, they are unfortunately potentially going to get bumped down. And I don't think that's what we're looking for, right? I don't think that was the intent of the marriage of the state requirement with us even having a public comment. So I know that that is a little awkward hiccup, and I'm just basically trying to prompt the member of the community and say, this has a public hearing, are you willing to wait? I found up to this point, most folks have said yes. You saw on last Tuesday, the 2 folks that were asked chose not to, so.
Just to also kind of piggyback off of Chair Parker, if the person is trans and maybe their identification doesn't match who they are, if you accept that, can I ask that there's some discretion used with some people standing around them? If someone presents you with an ID that is different from how they're standing before you, that it's not announced out loud. That's one of our biggest fears as a trans person, that somebody outs you standing in a public space. And if someone is different, and that you just acknowledge that and just kind of want that on record.
Thank you.
I'll have a conversation with staff that mans the table.
Okay.
Okay, I appreciate that, Ms. Darby, thank you, that's good input, thank you, Chair Hill. Okay, so that was a little bit as to policy and comment, and Ms. Darby was just sharing how we've implemented that new rule. Does anybody else have any questions about public comment, Tennessee residency, at this point? Nope.
Can we?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Can we just gather feedback as, like, for a period of time of how this operates, just so we know if we need to go back to the way it was? Just because I have a little bit of concern, especially with some recent events.
Yeah.
Can I ask what kind of information you would be interested in getting feedback on?
Yes, so any marginalized communities, et cetera, how this affects them, how many people are turned away at public comment, et cetera.
I don't think anyone's been turned away at this point.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chair Parker, go ahead.
Just very quickly to add, I've found myself at times being confused about what to tell people about what the current rules are, because ever since we enacted public comment in, was it 2018 or very early 19, the rules have changed significantly. They've kind of swung to where you couldn't talk about anything on the agenda, and then it's like you had to be something on the agenda, and now it's, I think, either, but we prioritize this, so maybe if there's is there a page somewhere on our website easily accessed that says, like, here's the current rules about addressing the council?
There is.
Yes.
There is? Okay,
You
good,
can go
good.
to nashville.gov/public comment.
I will remember that and point people to that.
And it has the rules, it has the list of residency, the acceptable proof of residency, and it has FAQs on there. Also, something worth noting is on proof of residency, the way we have it set up right now is there is a document. If you have something on this document, you will be accepted. If you have something that's not on the document, we will consider it.
Yeah.
So it's not an exclusive, exhaustive document.
And this is not necessarily a Metro Council thing, but I'm not sure how to reach this otherwise. But like other boards and commissions, other public bodies that are creatures of Metro, they have different interpretations and different rules about how the public comment works. And some of those are set by their rules, some of those are, so I don't know if it would be feasible to get those all like aggregated and just publicly accessible somehow. I mean, it's very hard to find the bylaws for some of the boards and commissions, but I don't know, I'm drifting way away from the subject of conversation, but maybe we can
We're creating uniformity for all boards and commissions.
For public comment?
For the way they operate,
Okay.
bylaws, everything.
You're on it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And as well, to go back to off the top of the meeting, social media, there is always a specific post about public comment that has a link out to the FAQ and the page. And so I would encourage sharing that consistently because I do absolutely concur. We did it a variety of ways. Then you come into a new term, then you do rules changes, and I've been, I mean, I'll just be frank, I've been a little bit concerned that like the pendulum has just been swinging a lot because we change a rule responsive to something happening, then we do all that, we implement it, that has challenges. So, you know, I know we're all trying to kind of do our best on this, but I do appreciate the call, pro tem, for kind of some feedback, right? I mean, I think that's just staff feedback, Margaret, like, you know, what are they seeing, and is anybody turned away or wanting to speak or otherwise, so, okay. Thank y'all for that.
Chair Gadd.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, Chair.
Just a synopsis of what was lifted up by other members. Just if we could maybe just have, whether it's a best practice to protect, whether it's how we're gonna trans members of the community that come for public comment, or folks that have different documentation matters that were lifted up as part of the marginalized community. But if we could look at best practices for how we protect those individuals and make sure we're respecting that and bring that, how we can do that through as a chair, I'd love that. I think just that's probably the interest overall that was already cited, but I think that way, if we need to have an amendment to our role, so we address that, I think that would be really helpful.
Okay, so I think then maybe responsive to Ms. Hill's concern and that as well, not just sort of speaking with staff, but then making sure that everybody kind of understands what's that sort of best practice way we're going to receive that information, whether chairs and committee, if they were to be presented with the same.
Yeah.
So just making sure all get on the same page about the most appropriate way to deal with that. Okay, thank you, appreciate that. Let's see, so under other, for council staff updates, Margaret, can you just give an update on Sergeant at Arms, kind of policy and practice, what we've received from MNPD, we've edited that, and kind of where that lives right now, as far as in the process?
So MNPD sent over a policy, that kind of their, expectations for their sergeant at arms who is serving at a council meeting, down to, it's everything from where to go down to what to sign off for parking, that sort of thing. So it's very logistical oriented for that person. We've added some things in there that we think are important as far as, being able to kind of make sure you have an eye on the whole gallery. If you have a block there, kind of like go, walk to the other side if you need to see what's happening behind the column, that sort of thing. And we've made a couple of, given some input on that document. It has been sent back to MNPD as well as the Sheriff's Office, because as you all know, Sheriff's Office has taken over, they've eliminated the contract for Allied, and they are now, providing security for this building. So during a council meeting, the Sergeant at Arms is the security within the council chamber, and then DCSO is security outside the council chamber. So we have asked DCSO to take a look at this document to see what they can add to it. And so it's still in progress right now, but we'll get something back to you. Just because it's in progress does not mean that the Sergeant at Arms is not doing what they need to be doing. They are at the meetings, and they are, monitoring and making sure that, the room is secure while we're conducting meetings.
And I think we had also expressed the expectation that, it's no more than kind of 2 or 3 people who are kind of on this duty, right? So that's not just new person every time that kind of has to get up the curve to understand our kind of layout and issues. So that is pretty near the finish line, and I think that segues Ms. Hayes into, so as we're thinking about kind of, the Sergeant at Arms and kind of, who does what, that segues a little bit into kind of safety policy. You know, if this were to happen, how do you exit the building? Who leads that? Goodness forbid, somebody drops and needs the defibrillator. Like, it's the sergeant at arms, he does the defibrillator. Like, you know, some of those just kind of if this, then that type safety issues. And so, Ms. Hayes, can you just kind of give us a quick update on anything that is sort of safety or facilities related? I know we've seen some new things in the garage, maybe that the members would be interested in knowing about.
They put cameras in, newer cameras on P1. We've got some on there that they're just not as clear, but the courts have gone in and put in cameras on P1, and then they put them, like as you go into the elevators, you're still working on the elevators, and there's some in the stairwells. So they are doing something every day, trying to protect, make it better for everyone that attends the building. You'll see a lot of stuff happening, you know, as you see stuff going on in the garage, it's to help protect everyone, upgrades and stuff. We do have a card key, sort of, you see it as you go in, that big tall, I didn't know what it was, but it's I think it's called a tag master, but it's really to look at the tag on your front of your dash to come into the garage. That has not happened with us yet. It will within time, but it's ADA for ADA compliance, so you'll see that, a little changes in that.
So ADA for ADA compliance at this time is all that's kind of for.
Yeah.
Like it scans something on your dashboard to let you.
Yeah, it's hard for some, you know, people to be able to do that. You see a lot of roof and there's
Scaffolding's down, yay!
Scaffolding's down. It's been up since May of this year. You're going to see more scaffolding still up on the east side because they're repairing the inside or the bottom part of the wall. They call it the ceiling or roof or whatever you want to call it.
Basically the inset where the columns are, water damage. So all that scaffolding was just for the inset in the front of the building. And it will remain, Ms. Hayes, on the east side to get up to the roof.
It's going to probably stay till spring of next year. And then they're going to start with the roof, and that'll be probably another 8 to 10 months. So you're going to see that going on. They're going to go from the roof, that east end right here will stay for about probably spring of next year, and then they'll start with the roof, and it will go into probably spring of 2026. So you're going to see a lot of scaffolding back there for a while.
And all the way down to itty bitty minutia stuff. Ms. Hayes made sure the treads on the stairs were finally fixed by General Services.
So issues that had come apart on the stairwell on the inside. So if you see anything like that in the building that you see that you travel, to let me know, because we had those fixed immediately for trip issues or whatever. So anytime. And then we're also looking at, did you trip?
No. I have another complaint.
Well, be sure to let me know. I'll try to get it fixed for you. But we're also looking at doing some safety, training and stuff like that. Try to help all of us, in case of a hurricane, or not tornado, or
But I think, at the start of the year, maybe just as far as kind of safety protocols tied in with the, information for the sergeant at arms, if the gallery is full, members exit to this stair, if the gallery's empty, you exit out that door. In case of fire, you go out front. In case of tornado, you go downstairs. Like, we've never, as a body, actually kind of done that sort of safety stuff. Where are the defibrillators? Who gets them? All that kind of stuff. So Ms. Hayes will help us with that as we move into the new year. And then lastly, Rosie, did you want to touch on the pricing for what Ms. Gadd alluded to? Pencils, pens, stickers, just small tokens that are also still useful to staff and members that are not just kind of trying to find some practical things that when we do have, the Girl Scouts and things like that come, as well as a few other things that we've been, I think, needing, in my view. So
I've been
can you share
working with
that?
a vendor right now. We're just getting the pricing, but it's we're looking at a nicer pen with our logo on it, and then pencils, the same for children or whatever that come in, and then stickers. We're looking at doing the Metro Seal just a paper sticker that you could just stick on your lapel. They're working on that and providing pricing for us, and until we see what the costs are and the number we purchase depends on what the cost of whatever we buy. And then we also need to look in our budget to make sure that we can take care of that as well. So we'll probably see something the first of next year.
Okay, and then as well, Ms. Hayes looking at potentially table covers that would be basically kind of a resource library for you all. So if you have a community meeting and you've got an extended table, you just stretch that blue cover over there. It's got the nice Metro Council seal on the front of it, and you can check that out for use. So we're looking at that from a pricing perspective. Our parade banners are about 30 years old. Ms. Hayes is looking at that. And so, yeah, so we're, I think it's roughly all the same.
We've already got the pole, but we just need we wanted to do maybe a slip, where you could just slide it through there instead of we can put them on, like we were looking at doing two that you put on the truck and one that you can carry. We do both of those.
Because the LGBTQ caucus poll came in handy.
Yes.
We got one just like that.
Thank you.
For all the others.
That's an extended painter pole.
Yeah.
It works perfect.
That one fit in my car. The other one did not.
Very practical. I think post-parade, we somehow got whatever pole that was in my husband's teeny little VW bus. We were like, in the window!
That's exactly what my problem was. That's the one that fit.
On the practical side of things, Ms. Hayes has done a great job as well. I did ask kind of at the start of this term, basically just creating a document, all the parades, all the contacts, who does it, is it in partnership with the caucus? We've got some additional Christmas parades now. Pro Tem has elevated one in kind of Antioch Southeast. Bellevue is now doing a holiday parade. So again, we just want to who's the primary contact? How do we participate? Donaldson Hermitage has one. And so tis the season, but so that we could be kind of consistent in how we participate in those and keeping up with all that. So yes, Pro Tem.
Can I add one thing? My complaint.
Yes.
There are cockroaches in.
I've already complained about that.
Okay, because I take pictures of them all the time, and I might make it into a video.
They spray all the time at this old building, and it comes,
I'm gonna start
way
naming
down.
them.
Yeah. Yeah, some of them are big enough to carry out of here.
Okay, I'm just gonna go on the record and say I have only ever seen one in the downtown or down in the tunnel.
I'll show you all.
Oh, okay, I'm not sure.
I just know if this is the right place, but I just wanted to ask if we could give some positive feedback to DCSO of the transition from them switching over from the other security to us. It seems like it's been pretty smooth. Everybody's been seamless, and I just want to be noted how much we appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And they're always going to be available for y'all as you leave the courthouse, into the garage. So if you see anything or
They've done a great job, in my opinion.
uncomfortable, just to make sure they know they're in different places so that you don't know about.
I've spoken to some of the longstanding security folks that made the transition, and they seem very pleased
They do
with
seem
the new
happy.
arrangement. So
Yeah, that's great.
it's working good on all levels, it seems like. So
It's great.
I think one last thing to know, they can't leave until we leave, so if we stay in the chambers talking for a while, they can't leave. And if you do ride with a colleague to go grab a bite to eat after the council meeting or something, just let them know, because I've done that, right? I'll hop in somebody's car so they're not waiting for you. So just be aware.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Alrighty. I think then that is everything on that front. Anybody else from staff have any other updates that they wanted to share with the committee? Nope. Okay. All right. So we are now then moving into our state legislative update. Mr. Morrison is our guest, Theo, and so you know your slides, but I guess I would welcome you to, I'm not sure how we're gonna, do we want Mr. Morrison to join us?
It might be helpful for him to be up here so he can see the slide that he's talking about.
And I have them here too.
Yeah.
And then I guess he can tell you to.
Yeah, I will advance, the slides.
Thank you.
So as
Thanks for allowing me to join you.
Yeah, as you all know, we started last year, kind of joining an already established Metro contract and modifying that contract so that when Mr. Morrison is working for the council, he is only working for the council, right? So it was a Metro-wide contract, and we amended that to be just supportive to our effort, as we have talked about kind of over recent years, of making sure that we have somebody that has eyes on the Hill to be aware of legislation that is affecting Metro, and also very specifically legislation that we have previously passed that might be specifically looking at a preemption, and then of course never to be cross purposes with the mayor's office, who is also represented by a lobbyist. We are all on Team Nashville, but we just kind of thought more eyes the better, and so we've been through about a year of that cycle, and appreciate Mr. Morrison, and just asked him to come back and share with this committee. So sir, you have the floor, go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I'm going to give you a brief overview. We don't want to get too far into the weeds. I want you all to be able to go home and enjoy your family as we near the holidays here. But I wanted to just kind of start with the general method of operation for our state. Our legislature works on a 2-year cycle. So next year will mark the beginning of a 2-year cycle on January 14th when the legislature returns. The first week of session, when they begin, is referred to as the organizational session. It's usually Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. During those days, they will go through and there will be the swearing in of House and Senate members, the election of the House and the Senate Speaker, along with the election of constitutional officers, and then usually on that final day of the organizational session, you'll get the assignment of members of the House subcommittees and the full committees, along with the Senate committees as well. There's talk of which is customary for the first year of a General Assembly, is to have a 2-week break so that they can deal with the new committee assignments, office assignments. Sometimes you'll have a member who gets moved into a leadership role, and then that gives them a larger office in most cases.
Mr. Morrison, is that what you're talking about between the 18th and February 2nd?
Yes.
That's kind of that spot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the time period there that they would do all of that.
Next slide.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm like, it's going to happen. I'm waiting.
Okay.
No, this is it. This slide here is 2024 election, created some changes, all on the primary side, on the Republican side. So you had John Lundberg, who was the Senate Education Chair. He was defeated by Bobby Harshbarger in his primary. We lost Patsy Hazelwood, who was the chair of the House Finance Committee. She was defeated in her primary by Michelle Renaud. And then John Reagan, who was the chair of the House Government Operations Committee, lost his primary to Rick Scarborough.
Theo, on this, which is it? I know there were a couple that were supporting that had support on maybe vouchers. voucher support taking a role in that. Is that Mr. Reagan's only, or is that also John Lundberg's?
You did have some candidats that supported vouchers that did win.
So out of those,
Mayberry, Aaron Mayberry, and then there was another.
Mr. Scarborough too, wasn't it? Or
I think so, and yeah.
and I don't know if Bobby Harshberger, since John Lundberg was the chair.
I think Harshberger, we're still determining where his stance is, but I think it's choice, but we will see how that plays out. This slide here, special session on education. There was some talk of a possible special session that would deal with the education savings account expansion plan by Governor Lee. That is not set in stone, but there was some talk of maybe doing that during that 2-week period, right after the organizational session. And it kind of makes you wonder how a special session on education, particularly education savings account, would play out under the Trump administration that has really ran on the platform of universal school choice, but at the same time abolishing the Department of Education. So how would that play out if we suddenly had school vouchers for everyone, but then no Department of Education, and would that translate into doing away with Tennessee's Department of Education? All those things would be some things that would be up for discussion. So I wanted to include that as well. Next slide. Governor Lee will deliver his penultimate State of the State address in 2025. Usually, the State of the State address takes place that first Monday in February. So in this case, it would be February 3rd of 2025. This has not been set in stone, but that's a TBD. The next bullet there, expect education and relief for East Tennessee in the wake of the aftermath, the effects of Hurricane Helene, to be part of the proposed legislative package. Also wanted to include some important dates, the House and Senate bill filing deadlines. Bill filing deadlines in the House and the Senate have yet to be determined, but based on past history, it would generally fall possibly February 6th. House leadership discussing a possible 10-bill limit, which would be a reduction from the current 15-bill limit for each member of the House. The Senate doesn't have a bill limit. However, if you have a bill, you have to have a companion bill in the respective House in order for that bill to move forward and receive concurrence in both chambers. Next slide, please. Happenings on the Hill. Take your pick. Right now, as you probably know, there have been some discussions about Tennessee State University, meetings of the State Building Commission, discussed steps going forward for the future of TSU, with a focus on President Glenda Glover and her contract. There was also some discussions about, seemed like some pressure from the state for TSU to sell off their downtown campus, even though representatives from TSU stated that they had a plan in place and they were hoping to be able to carry out those plans in respect to to the downtown campus. So I want to mention that. Also, the next bullet is Senator Pody's anti-Semitism, anti-hate task force that he established back in September with a goal of trying to address some of the activities that's taken place downtown, as well as centered around activity around places of worship. He is a very pro-Israel, and so he called together a group of individuals representing the Jewish faith community to talk about potential legislation for 2025. That task force also included input from Metro Police, as well as Metro District Attorney General's office, to get feedback on how potential legislation
And then
would look and the impact.
Yeah, and if I can share, so,
Sure.
so when a task force like that is established and, we have a representative who represents part of Nashville and, so they're asking about Nashville things and how would this affect Nashville. Theo has been kind to attend all those meetings for us so that we can kind of be aware of what the conversation is and the intent is. Again, they're in a listening mode, not to engage on, yes, we want Metro to do this or do that or whatever, but just to be kind of listening and relaying to us what is being discussed. And I do think, again, that's really important for us because that gives us some kind of insight on what are the motivations, what was the formation of this idea, because once it kind of gets into how it will affect us specifically and or local governments, I think that's helpful for us to know. And Senator Pody in particular has done a lot of outreach to our members. And so, I would just ask if you will kind of just keep us apprised, if nobody's saying don't go meet with our state legislators, but if you can just kind of let us know, and then Theo's aware of that, and then we just kind of know who's talking to whom, and all for the good and the better. So, so I did want to thank you for attending those on our behalf.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you. Next item there. Just a couple of bills that have already been filed. You may or may not know that once a legislator is elected, or even as an incumbent, they can begin filing bills in November. So we've seen some activity, and the first out of the gate was Senate Bill 1, House Bill 1, which is the Governor's Education Freedom Act of 2025 legislation to establish the education savings accounts statewide. And then the next bill, Senate Bill 5, House Bill 11, would require the Department of Safety and Homeland Security to redesign driver's licenses, permits issued to qualified non-citizens to be easily distinguishable from licenses and permits issued to U.S. citizens. This bill is being referred to as the Scarlet Letter Bill from the Tennessee Immigrant Refugee community. So,
Members, if y'all will recall throughout the term, so we're just getting started, right? And so by the end of the session, Mr. Morrison is sharing a document with council, whether you choose to kind of get into it or not. He has an executive summary at the top, but he is tracking every single bill that could have an impact on Metro. Ms. Darby happens to hear about something. You all happen to hear about something. Oh, I heard about, maybe this caption bill or something, or, we can bring it into Mr. Morrison's awareness, he can make sure he's tracking it. So this is just the very, very start of what will eventually have, 50 bills on it, and you will receive on a weekly cadence. Ms. Gadd, go ahead.
So if we see those bills, do we send those directly to Theo? Do we send those directly to?
If you would send those, please, to me and Ms. Darby. And you can always CC Mr. Morrison, but we just want to, Theo represents the body, but by way of contract, it's sort of, Ms. Darby and I work with him. And we don't want to, we're not trying to put up a gate between you and Mr. Morrison, but if 40 different people are pinging kind of Mr. Morrison, and then we can make sure too that, like, he is indeed tracking what you asked, right? If we're aware of the ask.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. And then we are simply watching. We're not taking a position as council. So everything you're going is just a watch. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, strictly watching, monitoring. Technically, no action can be taken until you all, as a body, decide that this is the position of the Metro Council.
Right. And at which point, if we have spoken as a body and passed a piece of legislation, then Mr. Morrison can say the council, right, and speak on our behalf.
Okay.
But until we've done that, he's not speaking on my behalf. I'm not representing the body in that regard. So, go ahead.
One more follow-up question. So if it's past legislation or past actions that the Metro Council has taken, and then after the bill filing deadline in February, when you kind of get that solid list, so I assume you'll kind of issue those out, so we would likely have positions on legislation after that if a piece of legislation could potentially change a past council supported piece of legislation, or
And preempted item.
preempted or changed, or whatever, or maybe opens up, so you're kind of watching to understand whether or not, so we'll get that. And then one more follow-up question. Will we have, I can't remember this from this past session, will we get like weekly kind of where they are going to be in that committee? I think we did. I know. I know there's that tracking service that you can issue out your weekly report from what we're tracking.
That will continue.
Okay.
Yeah, where you'll get the weekly reports, and just to have an idea of what's going to be considered that week. Absolutely.
And the committee and the time and all that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know that's once you get that entered on the front end, you can get that issued out pretty quickly. But that's wonderful. And then if for some reason we are on the hill for something that's not related to Metro Council or council position because we're working on something else, as a courtesy, can let folks know. If it just is that let you know and Theo, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're up there in another capacity and you become aware of something that you think is important for Mr. Morrison to know or us to know, I mean, please do convey that, and we'll make sure. But, I mean, if you, nobody's saying if you see Theo up there, like, don't talk to him.
Sure,
I mean, but
I'll bug Theo regardless. But no, that's good. But just if we happen to be out there, just as an FYI, I don't know if that's just more of a courteous thing or if you're asking.
I do think that can be helpful. I mean, I know, members have been up there during session kind of on other matters, and you are just walking down the hallway and then somebody's like, hey, I want to talk to you about this thing, what's the position, whatever, again, not saying you may not have that conversation, but it would be helpful to kind of know that.
I figured that would be helpful.
Yeah.
So he knows why all the members are kind of pumped up.
Yes.
Yeah, so I would just generally
get yourself
say.
in trouble or get me in trouble. So it's just, stay on the same page.
Any members that are up there kind of just working in another capacity or for another purpose, just heads up is great. Thank you. All right. Are there any questions for Mr. Morrison or anything else, Theo, that you want to share with us? I guess we'll just open up to questions at this time.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I was just going to close by saying, things will get kicked off in January. We'll more than likely go into April, usually end up that probably no later than the last week of April. If there are sticky subjects, then maybe you go into May. But There's no, no set deadline. I mean, technically, the legislature has 90 days that they can work with, 90 legislative days. And a legislative day is different from a calendar day. So the legislative day is when the full House meets or the full Senate meets as a body. That gets counted against the 90 days. So.
Pro Tem Sepulveda, you're recognized.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you, Theo. I think we all count down the days until the state goes home.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your work on this. There are a couple of subjects that I'm very much interested in. So if there are specific topics that we would like tracked, do we send that to you? Or do we send that to the council?
Yeah, if you'll just send it to me and Ms. Darby,
Okay.
and we'll make sure, we have, during the session, on the back end of mine, Ms. Darby's weekly meeting, like a 30-minute touch base with Mr. Morrison. And so if you all have elevated anything that's of particular concern, or prior to him putting out the weekly report, hey, if members have had a lot of questions about so-and-so, can you make sure to include that in the summary? What about this bill? Is that in there? Where's it in committee? So it's basically like a weekly touch base. And so if we know that, we can make sure that's reflected.
Got it. I just know based on some legislation passed that there will inevitably be preemption that always occurs in regards to legislation that we've passed, and Nashville always gets hit the hardest.
Yep.
And legislation that I'm passing one night, and a lobbyist sitting in the gallery saying, oh, we already have a sponsor to preempt this. So there's definitely legislation that I need tracked, so I'll
For
go
sure,
ahead and send
do
it.
that. And yeah, I mean, I think that was part of the impetus of this. I myself had legislation that was, being talked about, being preempted, and just not being aware of that other than by happenstance, because we had a colleague who knew a colleague who heard, so we're trying to be very mindful of that, and be engaged and in front of that. So absolutely. Chair Gamble, you're recognized.
Vice Mayor. I want to ask Theo, thank you again for this update. Wondering if in the meetings that you've attended, we've heard reports in the news that the state legislature may be considering some type of housing bills to address housing reforms. Wondering if you've heard anything like that. Excuse me. And also wondered if in February you might be available to come and do a presentation to the planning committee about any discussions or any such bill, any legislation that may come down the pike regarding housing, as we ourselves look at introducing legislation in the spring and summer to address housing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I will say is, subsequent to last session, the administration kind of convened a post-session, these are bills that have implications on housing. If you look in your inbox for sure, right, we got the email from Ms. Hubbard. And so I had asked subsequent to last session that she pull together a memo. I think, Theo, you were sent that as well. So to your point, Chair Gamble, I think there were some things, kind of optimistic about, or maybe could be helpful but might need to be fine-tuned. And so, Theo, I guess I would just say if we would kind of look back at that memo and then talk to Angie Hubbard, because they do advocate very specifically on the Hill as part of various coalitions that they are a part of. And so, I mean, I would suggest if Theo were to come to speak to the committee, we would definitely want Ms. Hubbard and whomever on that Housing Services Division specifically works on that to kind of be, working together. Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to put it on with Theo's,
Yeah.
right? I've already talked to Ms.
Oh, yeah,
Hubbard and
no.
planning about that.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Definitely on my radar, because that is something, it's just an ongoing topic of discussion within the legislature's housing, and not only within, high density counties, like Davidson County, it's also an issue in rural areas now as well.
And that's probably why it's a priority at this point, so thank you.
Fair. Does anybody else have questions for Mr. Morrison at this time? Anybody? Okay.
Questions or concerns, or fears?
Prayers.
I'm scared to death what's coming.
Yeah.
This far, we're not gonna turn back now. Keep going. Stay strong.
Thank you, Theo.
Thank you.
Chairs, this is the part of the meeting where you have the floor for 2-ish minutes. We are at 5:30, and so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of you here, and so I guess technically you could have 4 whole minutes for your update, but we want to end timely, and so I guess I will just, if you've got something specifically that you want to share, Mr. Prep-T, I know Pro Tem, you were talking about the special meeting that you're going to have. Do you want to just kind of segue out of that and share anything else that you might have at this time?
Yes, I will say, so with contemplating the specially called meeting for January, I'm going to be sending out a notice to all of council as well to see if there are any other ideas for proposed rules changes for us to be able to sort of game them out ahead of time at that specially called meeting. But I'm still working on the timing for that. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that kind of, I have thought that a good rule might be a mandatory 1-meeting deferral of all new rules. And I do appreciate, Ms. Darby, I do think I had asked at the start of the term and that, we want to be consistent, but I do think analysis on rules changes is fair as to its implications on kind of implementation and as relates to staff and things like that. So I do think, kind of bringing a little bit of, finding our feeding and some consistency in that as far as how we address potential rules changes. So I appreciate you kind of aggregating that conversation. So thank you. And if you think of anything else that you want to come back to, you're welcome. Chair Gamble, anything that you would like to share?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you to all of the committee members that I've met with so far. You all may be aware, I think I mentioned at our last meeting that I would be holding one-on-one meetings with committee members, planning committee members, just to talk about what we've done over the past year and goals and expectations for moving forward. I've met with 7 of the 12 members so far, and those meetings are going well. Hope to wrap those up very soon. Also want to thank all the chairs and everybody who attended the presentation on November 19th. The planning staff came in and gave a brief presentation about best practices for public engagement and awareness around Title 17 amendments. They also shared that the Planning Commission has recently changed or established a policy around deferrals for Title 17 amendments. For example, when they have the public hearing for a Title 17 amendment, there will be an automatic deferral before the commission votes on it. So it'll be deferred 1 meeting at least before the commission votes on that amendment, just to give the public more time to be aware of the proposed amendment and have an opportunity to weigh in after the public hearing. The public hearing will be closed at that public hearing time. However, the commission will not take a vote. It'll be automatically deferred to the next meeting. And for more information on that, I encourage you to watch the video. There's a PowerPoint from the November 19th Planning Commission meeting on that, or Planning Committee meeting rather, on that. And then lastly, talking about upcoming presentations, I met with the planning staff last week just to get a timeline for when we might start receiving information from planning about the Unified Housing Strategy Study that they're conducting. It is wrapping up now, and they expect to have it completed by the first of the year, and we will get them on the calendar to come in and give the council an update, a briefing on that study. Also, the housing and infrastructure study that the council commissioned, they're still working on that. We'll have a preliminary draft early March, but intend to work in tandem with the Unified Housing Study on providing information. I know they're going to reach out to Chair Parker about us doing a joint planning and transportation infrastructure meeting, so we can kind of have everybody get the information at the same time. So look out for more information about that after the first of the year.
That's great. Pro Tem, do you want to update on boards and commissions working group at this time?
Yeah, I could do both.
Okay.
So for boards and commissions, I did put an update on my website. I made it a blog post just because it's easier and I could put attachments on there. I don't think there's an easy way to do attachments on Council Connect. Yeah, I don't want to go through it. I don't want to go through it. Honestly.
We can get attachments into
Yeah,
Council
okay.
Connect. Yes. Okay.
I'll just forward the link.
Okay.
So I went ahead and did that, and which included a survey that went out to commissioners with several questions in regards to how they felt. Is this board big enough? Is it too small? The timing, the location, what's missing, etc. So all of that is on the blog post. And then as to the scope of work of the working group, that's also on there. How many boards were reached out to? There is a survey that went out, or we received some feedback already from the staffers that work with the boards and commissions. So gonna start compiling that information to create another update. So we did just pass legislation at this last meeting to create some guidance as far as removing commissioners that do not attend board meetings on a regular basis, so that the Rules Committee has a mechanism in place to remove them. If the Rules Committee finds that there was an adequate excuse, then they don't have to remove them. But there is a mechanism in place for them to come to the Rules Committee and be able to explain that, etc. I was supposed to defer it to add an amendment, but we could do.
It, right?
Yeah, we'll do that on the back end to have some more guidance for the Rules Committee itself. So there's that piece of it. The next phase will be the size of boards and commissions and the uniformity throughout. It won't be super uniform, but there have been a couple of boards who have said that they're too small, some are too big, and some need to be reworked. Homelessness Planning Council being one of them, right? And that one was had a specific recommendation, etc. So we're looking at those. We are creating uniformity as far as the way they operate with a charter, and then they could work from a standard place, and depending on what the board is specifically, work their way out from there, etc. And so we are talking about creating standardized practices and standardized trainings. Am I missing something? There's a lot on that.
No, I think you've covered a good bit of it.
Pro Tem Sepulveda is directing her question at Ms. Darby because Special Counsel Darby and Pro Tem Sepulveda represent the council on this. It's not a working group such that we have. It's like a task force, I guess one might say.
Yes, so that's where we're at on it. And the timeline for the group is also on the first blog post, if you guys want to go back and look at that as well, which also includes potential charter amendments for the future. So that's the blog post, not the blog post, the charter, the board and commission working group. As far as pro tem updates, I made some promises, and now it's time for follow through. A couple of things that I had promised were creating a list of resources for translators and interpreters. While I am happy to receive many of your phone calls and texts, I am not always available, so sometimes while you're standing next to a constituent, it might be I'll call back later and you're already gone. I know that we have resources at the council office, but sometimes it's after hours. I do believe that we should pay people for the work that they do. So I am receiving a list from multiple organizations with different languages for you all to have access to, especially for community meetings and such, so you all may be able to reach some more of your diverse communities. So that is almost completed. I had also promised to create a debrief sheet on how to obtain an intern, because I always get asked, Sandra, how do you get an intern, and where do you find them? And the universities and high schools, et cetera, depending on how you want to get one. The non-disclosure that I use, the job description, et cetera, how, like, the benefits I provide, right? I do a scholarship, but there's also college credit hours, just the how-tos. So that is almost complete. That should be done by next week. And then I could share it with the council office, so then they could take a look and approve before see if it's okay to send out to the council members if they just want to take a look at that. And then what else did I promise? Yes, in the beginning of the term, I grabbed coffee with several of the new council members. It was something that in my first term, some of my colleagues did with me, right? Then council member O'Connell grabbed coffee with me. The former council member Sledge grabbed pupusas with me, right? And it was a good way to get to know, like, your colleagues and just basic things, and just small, like, hey, it might be good to, like, send birthday cards, and, like, this is how I send birthday cards every month to constituents, just like very small things. And so I think it's good to decompress and get to know your colleagues, and not talking about legislation, so my goal is to continue to do that beginning in January. And then the last thing were the little library projects, which I had started at the end of last term. We currently have 6 up, and these were in conjunction with different groups. So I started building them with the soccer supporter group, and they volunteered to build them with me. And then we did a partnership with WeGo, and we put 3 of them up at bus stops, and those empty out about every week. And so I know several council members asked me how to do those, and so I'm compiling a how-to on those as well. And I know that WeGo wanted to do this with me, and thought that it would be a good pilot to see if other council members would be interested, and see if they wanted to incorporate those in their districts as well. So I am almost done with the how-to on that as well, and that's what I got.
A lot of how-tos, thank you.
A lot of how-tos.
Yay, Little Free Libraries. Chair Parker, you're recognized.
Thank you. A couple things going on in departments that Transportation and Infrastructure Committee works with. Water Department is sending out notices regarding potential lead in the, not within the system, but from the water meter into folks' houses. You probably have constituents that are getting these letters and everybody's like, oh my gosh, what is this? What that letter means is they don't know what your, from the meter to your house is made of. There's different ways that Metro Water Services is going around and checking this, but they have a mandate to basically survey every single connection from a meter to a home. I'm not sure the time frame of it, but these letters are going to keep going out, and they're going to keep trying to get people to respond to the survey. I think in Bordeaux they've sent out like a machine that detects what kind of material is in the ground to try to get answers from folks who hadn't responded. So these letters are going to keep coming out. It's not super duper alarming. It looks very alarming because it says potential lead exposure in the letter, but you'll probably get questions about that, and I would just, they've got some really great resources on their webpage that you can point constituents to, kind of a self-check, like how to get under your house and scrape a penny or whatever they advise on the pipe. But yeah, just to be aware of that and to be able to point constituents to good information about it when they get those letters is, I think, important.
And some social media posts up as well, Chair.
Some social posts you can share,
yep.
Yes. But like in East Nashville, like on the East Nashville Facebook page, which is like our insane, massive place for discussion, it just keeps coming up and people are like, what's going on? And I type the same paragraph response in there
Copy,
and just
paste.
trying to make sure folks know that most people it's not a big deal, but if you do have lead, you do need to replace it. That's the bottom line. Most people aren't going to have lead, but if they don't know, then we don't know. Anyway, Water was overseeing solid waste after we restructured Public Works, and solid waste is now more in like a standalone position. I'm not going to use official terminology here. I see Margaret Darby looking at me. But we have hired a director, Tracy Thurman, came down from Kentucky. I met with her a few weeks ago, and super impressive. She has a lot of interesting stories to tell about her service in Kentucky and wants to learn more about Nashville. So other council members, I recommend reaching out to her office and sitting down with her if you have stuff you want to talk about or just want to get to know director of a new department here in our city that does extremely important work. NDOT stuff, I've been updated, and the Vice Mayor has been updated on promulgation of new sidewalk regulations, requirements, however you want to phrase it. I'm planning for them to come present to the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee about that, maybe by the end of the year, but early next year, if not, so we can hear about the policy that they're pursuing there. Several members have reached out to me with questions, concerns, thoughts, ideas about our traffic calming program. We did do kind of a legislative update to that in the last term. But I think there's enough interest among members that we're going to invite NDOT to come in the next couple months to the committee and just give a little presentation and then do like a question and answer session with members about traffic calming programs specifically. And that, like all other committee meetings where we've got departments presenting, I invite all members to come join, and it's definitely for everybody.
Chair Parker, you've got that traffic calming policy primer and a sidewalks primer coming too. So
I made a note to go read that traffic calming one before we get into this conversation, so I will do that. Other big thing, we've got the Transportation Improvement Program, which passed on November 5th, and thanks again everybody who was out there talking to constituents, even if all you did was vote for it. That was a big citywide effort, and I saw a lot of members out there sharing good information about the program and helping get it across the finish line. So thank you. The administration filed legislation that establishes kind of a framework for what I'll call like an initial phase of the program, which is like the next 2 years. It's basically to establish a 15-member advisory committee or council, I forget the term that they use, but this would not be, my understanding, like a proper board and commission. It would be 10 members appointed by the mayor, 5 by the council, and I think 1 by the vice mayor, or the vice mayor herself could sit the way it's written. My sense is that the administration is trying to there's a lot of personnel and policy decisions that are going to be made in a relatively short time frame for them to get this thing up and running. I think we have the big job posted. I imagine that there's going to be smaller jobs supporting the work of the big job, the person overseeing the program. So I think that we want reporting, we want them coming to committees, we want to be hearing from them, but also some flexibility for kind of that 2-year window for them to be able to put things in place and get this propped up. But then prior to the end of the term, I do think we want to see, like, well, how do we want to leave it this term? Like, do we want to leave it in this space of this first 2 years, this kind of things off the ground space, or do we want to take another look at the structure of it, whatever? I'm not saying we need to be doing that today. I'm saying that as we near the end of this term, I think that's a conversation that we're going to want to have as a body, and especially some of y'all first-termers are going to be sticking around, but those of us who likely won't be here definitely want to make sure that everything's set up for success for the life of the program. That's the big updates I had.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Chair Evans, you're recognized.
Thank you. So in public health and safety, we wrapped up the domestic violence sessions during the month of October. And so that spawned several follow-up discussions around a variety of topics. So it's been a very big learning experience. Likely at the beginning of February, the committee will have Chief Defender Martisha Johnson come and share kind of her perspective after watching the discussions, and kind of she's reemphasized to the Vice Mayor and I that essentially changes also require changes, on the public defender side. So we'll hear from her. Coming up at our immediate next meeting, we're going to hear from Partners in Care and Mental Health Cooperative, specifically because they have a data update related to kind of now that we've fully funded, them to have access to Partners in Care during like the regular business day. Like, what do weekends look like, and where are gaps, potentially kind of on some of the weekend responses that they're seeing. And then I've been investing some time around the Board of Health and the Metro Health Director search. And so last Thursday, they had a special called meeting with the 4 finalist candidates that they pared down from 11 that they did initial interviews with. And so they have chosen one. The video, thankfully, it was recorded by Metro Nashville Network, and it's supposed to be published sometime this week, hopefully before Thanksgiving. And so I would encourage everybody, after going through this process and kind of seeing, previously we got the contract and it was like, here's your new director, and it was like, and good luck, But now after kind of going through the whole kind of cycle and seeing, it was very informative. I thought they ran a very well-structured process, and we of course will decide, do we want to approve the agreement? And so per our resolution that we passed, I'd requested a special called meeting of budget and public health and safety together, just to give everybody an opportunity to ask the candidate that they've selected any questions that they have about, their vision, for the department and everything. So we'll see that, I imagine, at our second December meeting, since I received an email today that indicated to me that the person has accepted the position. And there's all kinds of other things, but I could spend all day talking about this committee and all the interesting aspects of things that are happening, but I will not delay our transition any further.
I don't really have a whole lot to add other than government ops seems to be running pretty smooth. We had some questions last meeting about the beer permits, of what the distance is and what's the distance of. So I was thinking about reaching out to Mr. Ben McDonald, see if he would come and present, just to kind of educate some people on some things about what the minimum distance is and what the minimum distance is from, whether it's school, churches, and what other things are involved, so that people are a little bit more informed to make the decision. There were several questions that came up about that a couple of times, so I want to try to address that. But other than that, everything's going pretty smooth, and we don't have a whole lot to report.
Okay, that's good. Thank you, Chair Hill.
I'll round
Chair
this up. Hopefully, I'll try to keep it to the 2 minutes. But we
end up having 4. It's fine. Like, nobody's done.
4, maybe.
You can have some of mine.
Okay.
No, I'm good. No, you don't want to give me too much room to talk. I'll just keep going. So, but the Arts Park Library and Entertainment Committee. So We do have a couple of upcoming specially called meetings. We did have one scheduled for December 5th, which we have canceled that as of today. That meeting was specifically to hear from the Arts Commission on their proposal of what their criteria was, their grant criteria. They need to bring that to Metro Council for us to approve by a resolution. So my intention around having, and the committee's intention around having that special called meeting is to specifically to give more dedicated time for all members and specifically members of the committee to be able to ask questions here, review before it goes to council. They were just in a meeting today at 12, started at 12:30, and I just got a note that they just wrapped up about 30 minutes ago. So, and they have, the Arts Commission itself has approved the operating grants, my understanding, but not the Thrive. And so I wanted to delay the meeting until we have something to come before that to specifically be able to address. So be on the lookout. I know making sure that the committee members are informed, but I'll also make sure to get an email out to all council members, just so I know we always get so much email, but sometimes it's good just to see it when we get that rescheduled. And it very well may be before the December 17th meeting, but it's my understanding after that it could also be in January before the one and only meeting we have in January on the 7th. I think that might also be the 17th.
Give me one.
January 21st, right? So it's going to be the third Tuesday of the month. So, but keep a look on that. We'll also have at our upcoming meeting, if anyone wants to hear from the Music Venue Alliance, who's done a report, we're going to have someone there. He's already shared that with all the council members, but we'll also be on the radar in the coming year, first or second quarter, or before hopefully by the end of the first quarter, have the Parks Department present the Park and Play, which will impact every district. And so we're gonna get that scheduled.
Do you mean the Plan to Play Master Plan update, or?
Plan to Play?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I've been also calling it the Park and Plan, which is also not in.
The plan.
I have called it a lot of names, but I got Play and Plan in there, and I feel
Really loved using an N back in the day. We were the walk-in bike.
Is that right?
Motion, the Plan to Play. Maybe didn't have an N in there, but yeah, it was an era. Yeah.
Exactly what the Vice Mayor just called it. That's exactly what we're going to have a presentation on. But I'll make sure everyone is aware of that too. And then we're asking other committee members to lift up departments to hear additional, especially before we go into budget. So we may have some additional just time set aside in our committee specifically. But those are the two that I think all council will be wanting to at least have an opportunity to hear. That's all I have.
Dokes. Okay. With that, we are 1 minute away, and so without anyone else seeking to be recognized, we are adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you, chairs.